Shalom from Israel to all of the Daystar viewers around the world. I'm Moshe Bar Tzvi, the producer and founder of Israel Now News. We at Israel Now News are dedicated to bringing you the full story and the truth about Israel from Israel. It's written in the Holy Bible when David said in Psalm 25:5, "Lead me in your truth and teach me, for you are the God of my salvation. For you I wait all the day long." And God says in Zechariah 8:16, "These are the things that you shall do. Speak out the truth to one another. Judge with truth and judgment to peace in your gates. And always search for the truth, and the truth shall set you free." John 8:31. I hope you enjoyed the program. God bless you from Jerusalem. Shalom, shalom.
Welcome to Israel Now News. I'm Yochanan El-Rom.
And I'm Erin Viner.
In our top story, Israel is at war with Gaza terrorists. After 7 years of endless rocket fire from the Hamas-run enclave, the State of Israel has been forced to strike against the terrorist infrastructure in Gaza. The Hamas terror organization escalated the firing of rockets into Israel, making life in the south unbearable. Hundreds of rockets have fallen. Some have hit schools, buses, and apartment buildings in southern Israel. Hamas terrorists have fired rockets on Jerusalem and Tel Aviv. The Iron Dome missile defense system has been working overtime, shooting down missiles mid-air with an 82% success rate. The IDF has deployed its 5th Iron Dome arsenal in the center of the country. Dubbed Hallelujah by IDF soldiers, the missile shield has successfully protected the Tel Aviv area from the rockets raining down on it. Hallelujah was finished 2.5 months early due to the Hamas rocket attacks, and its operating crew was trained in just 2 days. We now turn to Erin Viner with a summary of the events unfolding in Israel.
Thousands of rockets and mortars are raining down on southern Israel, Tel Aviv, Beersheba, and Jerusalem as Israel launched Operation Pillar of Defense against the terrorist infrastructure in Gaza. The fighting in Gaza has spawned waves of violent riots throughout the entire country, prompting the IDF to be on high alert in almost every area of Israel. The media war against Israel has also sparked anti-Israel protests throughout the world, and at the same time, anti-Israel computer hackers have made a united effort to penetrate Israel's computer systems.
The Israeli Air Force has been using precision airstrikes to eliminate top Hamas terrorists. Dozens of terrorists have been killed in the strikes. Among those killed was Ahmed Jabari, head of the Hamas military wing in Gaza. Jabari was the mastermind behind the kidnapping and imprisonment of IDF soldier Gilad Shalit. Several other terrorists who oversaw rocket development and the smuggling of weapons into Gaza were also killed. The airstrikes were preceded by numerous warnings to the citizens of Gaza in hopes of avoiding civilian casualties. Erin Viner has more on that story.
Yes, Yochanan, the IDF has taken every effort to avoid civilian casualties during the airstrikes into the densely populated Gaza Strip. Not only has the IDF dropped thousands of leaflets over populated areas, but the Army has actually made telephone calls to individuals warning them to avoid being in the vicinity of Hamas operatives or buildings used by terror organizations. Hamas is notorious for its placement of munition plants and terrorist bases in residential areas, and they often fire rockets from schools, apartment buildings, and hospitals. Knowing this, Israel's gone to great lengths to specifically launch pinpoint strikes against the terrorist infrastructure within Gaza that is threatening Israel. Last week, an IDF pilot canceled an airstrike after civilians moved within the range of the target just moments before it was launched.
In response to Operation Pillar of Defense, violent protests have erupted throughout Judea and Samaria. Hundreds of demonstrators gathered, waving Hamas flags and chanting, "Destroy Tel Aviv." Riots were staged in Bethlehem, Jenin, Nablus, and in Ramallah, where the IDF was forced to fire tear gas and rubber bullets on mobs of Palestinians who charged at them. Several Israeli soldiers have been injured by rocks. A Jewish community in Samaria was nearly infiltrated by Palestinians who left a Hamas flag and a letter warning them that they have 3 days to leave their homes. Israeli civilians traveling on Highway 443 were pelted with stones by Palestinians who penetrated the security fence.
Hamas has released a video in Hebrew. threatening to again deploy suicide bombing squads into civilian areas of Israel. According to the taping, Hamas has also ordered female suicide bombers to attack Israeli soldiers. A spokesperson for the terror organization vowed to inflict even more serious blows to Israel in the coming days and threatened that Hamas has missed carrying out the suicide attacks and that soon Israelis will again witness them taking place in their stores, bus stations, and cafes.
In the midst of Operation Pillar of Defense, the State of Israel is also engaged in a war against disinformation. Last week, several falsified pictures began to circulate in an attempt to vilify Israel during the military operation. One picture showed a man carrying a deceased child covered in blood. The caption read that the two were victims of Israeli violence in Gaza. The picture was immediately recognized as being part of an internet slideshow of an attack in Syria over a month ago. Another picture taken of an injured infant being carried by a relief worker was said to be a Palestinian child injured by Israeli terrorism. The picture was actually an Israeli baby badly wounded by a Hamas rocket attack in Kiryat Malachi. The relief worker pictured wore a vest which said the name of the Jewish city on it. Although the picture was proven to be a fraud, the damage of the accusations cannot be undone.
U.S. Secretary of State Hillary Clinton and United Nations Secretary General Ban Ki-moon both visited the Middle East in their attempts to encourage both sides to negotiate a ceasefire. Israel said that it was willing to stop the targeted attacks against terrorists if Hamas would agree to immediately halt rocket attacks against Israel's civilian population. Hamas leader Khalid Mashal responded that Hamas would not succumb to Israel's conditions.
At the same time that Hamas is firing rockets into Israel from Gaza, Israeli hospitals are treating people from Gaza. Residents of the Gaza Strip often cross into Israel for medical treatment, which is not available in their cities. The Director General of Rambam Hospital in Haifa said, "We are taking care of sick children and adults, and we are not looking at their religion or where they come from." Tel HaShomer Hospital in Tel Aviv said that it is providing care for dozens of Palestinians.
The Jerusalem Zoo hosted scores of traumatized children from southern Israel last week. Rather than running to bomb shelters as they have over the past several weeks, the children were bused into the capital to spend the day wandering around Jerusalem's beautiful biblical zoo. After being greeted by Mayor Nir Barkat, the children attended a play performed especially in their honor and enjoyed a day being outside in the sunshine.
Christian Zionists have launched a campaign against Hamas on Twitter. The terrorist organization has been using the micro-blogging platform to brag about the rocket attacks and to spread disinformation about Operation Pillar of Defense. The group Christians United for Israel, or CUFI, has launched an email campaign encouraging Twitter to ban Hamas. In a letter announcing its campaign, CUFI said, "The fact that a terrorist organization like Hamas, with so much Israeli and American blood on its hands, can use a service like Twitter is outrageous." Citing the fact that the United States has designated Hamas as a terrorist organization, the letter says it is illegal for any U.S. company to provide material support, including services and communications equipment, to a terrorist organization. Within 4 hours after launching the campaign, more than 12,000 letters were sent to Twitter and to the San Francisco Attorney General's office. Christians United for Israel hopes that this will encourage U.S. authorities to investigate the legality of Hamas using U.S.-based internet platforms.
Spiritual leaders of the Jewish state have called on all members of the House of Israel to pray for the well-being of the citizens of southern Israel and the IDF. Thousands of people gathered at the Western Wall last week, where they prayed for the safety of Israel in this difficult time. Members of synagogues were requested to recite Psalm 83 on the Sabbath and to recite the Avinu Malkeinu prayer that's usually designated for high holy days during their morning prayers. We here at Israel Now News are praying for IDF soldiers and the victims of the rocket attacks that have terrorized southern Israel since Israel withdrew from the Gaza Strip 7 years ago. We would like to call on all of our viewers to also pray for the peace of Jerusalem. And that concludes the news portion of our show. Please stay tuned for Ask the Source with Josh Reinstein.
Hello and welcome to Ask the Source. I'm your host, Josh Reinstein, and we're here on a beautiful day on our rooftop studio in Jerusalem. My guest today is Captain Eitan Bookman, spokesperson for the Israeli Defense Forces. Captain Bookman, thank you for being on the show.
Thanks for having me, Josh.
Captain Bookman, we're involved in Operation Pillar of Defense. Tell our viewers a little bit about that.
Well, Josh, the IDF embarked on Operation Pillar of Defense just about a week ago. The operation follows over 12 years of rocket fire. Since Operation Cast Lead 4 years ago, over 2,500 rockets have rained down on Israeli civilians, with over 1 million Israeli civilians in range of the rocket fire. Since a recent escalation started last Saturday with rockets fired on an Israeli patrol jeep, we decided that there was a necessity to actually move in and embark in a more serious operation inside the Gaza Strip.
Captain Bookman, what's puzzling is that isn't it the responsibility of any sovereign government to protect its citizens from terrorists and rocket launchers and rocket depots? Why is this a military operation? Shouldn't this be an ongoing operation forever until there's no terrorism in Gaza?
Well, the IDF is tasked with protecting the state of Israel. We are charged by the government of Israel to protect Israelis, and we do that on a day-to-day basis. Even before we embarked on this operation, we generally relied on pinpoint strikes targeting Hamas operatives who would launch rockets at us from inside of the Gaza Strip. However, we generally limited our response following directives of the political echelon. We decided to strengthen this operation and kind of ramp up our response once the government told us that it was time to move in and weed out the center of terror inside of the Gaza Strip. We embarked on the operation with a number of major directives. The first was to topple the Hamas command and control capabilities inside of the Gaza Strip. The second was to move in and remove the advanced military capabilities that Hamas and other terrorist organizations in the Gaza Strip have managed to acquire, including long-range rockets that can reach Jerusalem and Tel Aviv, and UAVs or drones that Hamas could use for intelligence collection or for kamikaze attacks on Israel.
You know, one of the big stories of this conflict is the success of the Iron Dome missile system. People have been calling that a game changer. Can you tell our viewers a little bit about the Iron Dome system and what that means for this conflict?
Yeah. Unlike a standard conflict, the conflict that we have with Hamas and the Gaza Strip is one in which they target our civilians. What's more frustrating for Israel is that while they're targeting our civilians, they hide behind their own civilians. And because we're motivated by the values that shape Jews and Israel, we do everything we can to protect their civilians as well, to make sure that they're not dragged into the conflict. In effort to protect our civilians, over the past couple of years, we've been developing a revolutionary system called Iron Dome. Iron Dome was first rolled out on April 7th, 2011, and it's essentially the equivalent of hitting a bullet with a bullet. When rockets are launched from the Gaza Strip, we launch rockets in the space of 15 seconds to intercept those rockets before they land in Israeli urban centers.
You know, we're seeing all over the world pro-Israel rallies, but something that we're seeing not just in Muslim countries, but in Western countries, is pro-Hamas rallies. This is unprecedented. Why would Western students, leaders, come out and support a terrorist organization that's targeting a civilian population? It's like someone supporting Osama bin Laden after September 11th. Do you think this is just simple anti-Semitism, or is there something going on that we don't understand?
I think the battle that we're facing right now is not only a battle between Gaza and between Israel. The battle that we're facing right now is a battle of information. It's a battle of narrative. And there are people who rely heavily on misinformation. Hamas, in the 7 short days of this operation, has already released multiple videos claiming things like that they've shot down F-16 jets, that they've shot down Israeli drones, that they've used on multiple occasions ground-to-air missiles. And that is all blatantly false information, and we do everything we can to battle that. However, there is large grassroots support among various organizations and countries that make it extremely difficult to really combat it. And that's what we're focusing on right now in the IDF.
You know, there's a lot of talk about a ceasefire, maybe that this will stop, that the conflict will be over. How do you see that from a military point of view?
Well, from a military perspective, From the military perspective, our first and foremost priority is to protect Israelis. We do that following the directives of the government. So we were told to embark on this mission, on Operation Pillar of Defense, and we're doing it as well as we can. So far, over the past week, we've targeted over 1,500 terrorist sites inside of Gaza. That includes senior leaders of Hamas, the people who have developed the research and development drone capabilities inside of Gaza, people responsible for anti-tank capabilities, smuggling tunnels, underground rocket launchers, including rocket launchers that we targeted yesterday in soccer fields in the Gaza Strip and near cemeteries. And we've been striking those targets hard. We're ready to keep on doing that as long as it's necessary.
We at Israel Now News and our viewership believe in the power of prayer. We understand that it's God that helps you in these times of need. How best can our viewers pray for the Israeli Defense Forces and the State of Israel?
Well, I think that if you look at the name of this mission, Pillar of Defense, you'll realize that the place that it comes from is the Jewish nation's exodus from Egypt. The cloud that protected the Jews as they traveled through the desert, protecting them from the threats that tried to rise up against them, from the Egyptian army and from the perils of the desert, is exactly where this operation gets its name, Pillar of Defense. And that's what we need right now. We need a pillar of defense that isn't only necessary a military pillar. It's the support that we get from people both in Israel and around the world. People who realize what the right cause is, where justice is, the people who protect civilians on both sides, and the people who are ready to do anything they can do to protect Israel. So that's what we need. We need the support from everyone.
Captain Bookman, there are literally tens of millions of people watching this show. What message do you have for our viewing audience?
The message that I have for the viewing audience is the same message that I have for the people in Israel and the people in Gaza. We can attain peace. Everybody wants to attain peace. Right now, the IDF is driven by three primary values, as it always has been. Loyalty to the state of Israel, loyalty to the nation, and protecting the state. However, there is one more value that really drives us all, and that is human values, dignity. And that's something that we all want, and I think that that's the kind of thing that we can all unite around.
Thank you, Captain Bookman, for being on the show. And thank you for tuning in to Ask the Source. I'm your host, Josh Reinstein. Now back to the studio.
More than 1 million Jewish children have been killed by abortion in Israel since 1948. Israel is currently engaged in a demographic war for its very survival as a Jewish state. Imagine what a difference 1 million more Jews would have made for Israel. Friends of Efrat saves the lives of thousands of children every year by providing support to pregnant women in distress. Since 1977, Efrat has saved over 30,000 lives and is recognized as a world leader in preventing abortions. You can play a major role in Israel's survival now by helping us save Israel's unborn children.
Up next, Shining Light from Israel.
יו, זה צבע אדום באמצע הלילה. נאמבר 2, נראה לי הולכים לישון פה הלילה. עוד אחד. קוסמק עד שנרדמתי.
איזה פחד.
Israel, like any other country, has the right and the obligation to protect its citizens from harm. Terror organizations operating with the ruling power in Gaza, Hamas, intentionally target Israeli civilians with rocket attacks and infiltrate Israeli territory to commit terrorist attacks. This situation, in which Israel's civilians have been under constant terrorist attacks, has forced Israel to undertake necessary security measures in order to protect its people.
Please stay tuned for the ICEJ report from the International Christian Embassy, Jerusalem.
What makes the miracles of Jesus even more miraculous? Standing where they happened, in Israel. Come explore Jerusalem, where Jesus opened blind eyes. Visit the hills of Galilee, where Jesus fed the multitude. Stroll through Capernaum, where Jesus lived and taught and healed. To learn more about standing where it all happened in Israel, visit www.goisrael.com. Come visit Israel.
Israel is finding itself in a new conflict. The situation with Gaza escalated over the past few days, with some 700 rockets and missiles raining down on Israeli cities. What is new in this conflict today is that the new weaponry and the new missiles which Hamas, which controls the Gaza Strip, is holding, can reach now population centers like Tel Aviv and Jerusalem. The situation has become unbearable for many Israelis, in particular for old people and for children.
The ICEJ has long established relationships in the areas now under fire, and we have received numerous urgent requests for help. Over the past week, an ICEJ-sponsored relief team of 9 volunteers was on the ground providing food, first aid kits, blankets, toiletries, and other necessities to those affected by the hostilities.
Our morning starts with a siren that wakes us up, having to get ready and shower quickly, just doing everything quickly. Then we leave for work in fear, hoping that we don't get hit on the way, that we don't have to lie down on the ground prostrate like you just did. The workday is short. We go quickly and come back quickly, and we can't leave our homes. The supermarket is a 5-minute process, going in to grab the most basic necessities to exist day by day. We can't just go and visit places or go to the malls, even just to breathe the outside air. We are stuck here.
ICEJ aid directors also recently visited the city of Ashdod and assisted with the distribution of items for the many children whose daily lives have been disrupted due to the constant sirens warning of potential rocket attacks.
My children are frightened. They are not really living. This is not a way of life, to run from siren to siren. We live in the shadow of fear. We have gone through many wars. We have learned through many wars. Praise God, as they say. We are pushing forward and we are surviving. We are a nation that survives, and we will continue to survive. Thank you guys for caring about us. You know how much it supports and encourages us that someone from the outside comes and cares for us. First of all, it warms the heart to see that people are thinking about us, coming to us and worrying about us. That they care about us and identify with us, with our pain and the circumstances that we are facing. Not just what we see in the television, the people are with you, but that the people come down to us and hug us, even if it's not with material things. Simply a hug on its own fills our hearts and gives us the strength to continue, and to hold up our troops until we arrive at the point of quiet, which we are waiting for in this country.
We here at the International Christian Embassy, we are located in Jerusalem. As a matter of fact, yesterday we had to send our staff to the bomb shelters as the sirens were ringing here in Jerusalem. We are committed to stay. We established a very special emergency fund for Israel in a crisis situation, and through that we could help countless people yesterday in Sderot and in many of the villages around the Gaza Strip to give them comfort. Many people called us and they thanked us for their support, for standing with them. They understood that Israel is not alone. And I want to invite you to join us and to partner with us in this important time in Israel's history, and to make sure that Israel understands that there are Christians all over the world which stand with her in this difficult period. And I want to ask you to support us as International Christian Embassy to make a measurable impact here in the nation of Israel at this time. We are your embassy in Jerusalem. May the Lord bless you out of Zion.
That's all for this edition of Israel Now News. I'm Yochanan El-Rom.
And I'm Erin Viner, reporting from our studio in Jerusalem. Please join us again next week for all your updates from Israel.